It's nice to have such a sort of compliant audience. Normally, when I have a group of people, and most of them are sort of not too happy to see me. Thank you very much for inviting me to come and speak. It's a real privilege to be here with so many people who are passionate about wildlife, wanting to preserve them, and I'm one of those people myself. So what I want to do is to give you a quick demonstration, talk about the Rural Crime Team. I've got one slide and that's it, so you'll have to just focus on me for the time being. I'm PC Lee Andrews, PSI on the Rural Policing Team. I work with two other officers who are dedicated to that role. That role is a full-time occupation for me. I'm not split in any different ways to do that role. My other colleague who I work with at Stowmarket is Sergeant Brian Calver, who was recently recruited in September, and a colleague called Kevin Stollery, who's based out of Halesworth. Each of us have done a week foundation course in wildlife crime, which covers trapping, persecution, different sorts of legislation in relation to wildlife and how that wildlife is persecuted and how we fit into that. And we have inputs from Natural England and Paul Cantwell, who work quite closely with the wildlife investigations, incident investigation scheme about poisoning of raptors and things like that. The team is supported by a number of other wildlife crime officers who work normally on sector doing other duties, whether that's beat officers or response officers. They do it as a supplementary role, so they do some additional work for us if we're currently busy. So we have 5 other wildlife crime officers. The team in itself has an inspector who works in our control room, who's also a wildlife crime officer, so he knows about the little idiosyncrasies in relation to wildlife crime and legislation, how we interpret and how we deal with that. So the role of the rural policing team, we have 3 strands. So the first one is rural crime, which will be agricultural crime, theft of farm machinery. The second will be heritage crime, so theft of lead, church roofs, night hawking, the illegal use of metal detectors on land which has got a significant archaeological interest. And more relevant and more pertinent to people here is wildlife crime. The wildlife crime that we look at is governed normally by the priorities set by the National Wildlife Crime Unit. So they will come under the priorities of badger persecution, raptor persecution, CITES, which is the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, and pretty much any other sort of wildlife crime basically contravenes current legislation in relation to that. We work with a number of organisations, and as a police officer, we normally just work with 1 or 2 people, fire brigade, NHS, social services. As a wildlife crime officer, I've been amazed at the level of cooperation and partnership working that I've never seen in any element of police working whatsoever. So we work with the RSPCA. We provide an enforcement capability to them. As a charity, they have no powers of entry, no powers to get warrants, no powers to seize anything. So we work with the RSPCA, we work with their Special Operations Unit, and we've done a number of warrants recently where we've used our expertise, should we say, to gain entry to places and to prevent any animosity towards the RSPCA. So we also work with the RSPB as well, have a Special Operations Unit, Suffolk Wildlife Trust, Natural England, UK Border Force, we work with them for CITES. We go down to Stansted and open up mail that's got ivory in it and all sorts of other things, animals that have been smuggled. We also work with people locally. Adrian's here at the back there. He's provided us with a wealth of information in relation to badgers and sets and identification, and so has Paul. So as police officers, we are normally used to theft and damage and things like that. When it comes to badger sets and what sort of nest this is and what sort of nest is that and what sort of deer is that, David, if you're still here, very informative, telling us about what sort of deer there are and things like that. So we're always learning about the different species and how we identify them, what's an active badger set and what isn't an active badger set. So some of the things that we are really having problems with at the moment are hare coursing. I don't know if any of you know much about the hare coursing problem. Due to the nature of Suffolk and its geography, it's very good hare population. So we have a number of people who will travel into this county and also into Norfolk to course hares with lurchers, long dogs. The amount of money that changes hands on this betting is phenomenal. We're talking of bets of £15,000 on dogs to win. So the incentive for these people to come to our county and course the hares is quite great. You touched on the penalties. The penalty for a hare courser going through court now would be £200. So we also get the associated crime that comes with that, which will be the violence and abuse towards gamekeepers, landowners, the damage to fences, the drivers making off, all sorts of collisions involved with this reckless activity. So what we're trying to do with magistrates is to make them aware that it's not just some chap with a dog chasing something fluffy, which happens all around the countryside, to make them aware of the effect it has on landowners, the effect it's having on the species and the people who are involved in that. And that's a long game. That's something that is going to take some time for us to do. But we're working with the Hare Preservation Trust as well, helping us out to make sure we can put these points across and really try and deal with the most abhorrent crime. We have been using drones recently, and Tom talked about his drones, and we've been using those to target in hare coursing, which is prevalent all over East Anglia. Norfolk and Suffolk are effectively training grounds for hare coursing, and Lincolnshire and Cambridge are what would be the Premier League, where the big money is at. So we are supported quite well by the constabulary at the highest level, from the Chief Constable and the PCC. We've all got on board with this. I myself worked as a wildlife crime officer on my own for the last 2 years. In September, the team increased, so we had Brian and Kevin come on board. And quite nicely, we've been given the right kit to do the job. So we're given 4x4 so we can go to places and get into areas where we need to get to. We're given the right equipment, so night vision and binoculars and all those sort of things. So we've become quite effective at targeting people, and we've got a number of people who are waiting their day in court. So we've been quite successful in the sort of 3 or 4 months we've been running as a team, with enforcement, with prosecution and things like that. So really, my parting shot for you is that if there's anybody here that thinks that they might be able to help us out with about otters or with foxes or with any other mammal species, and think, well, I've got an input, I can give you that, I can talk to you about that, I can take you out and show you habitat. We would really like to get in touch with us and talk to us about that. That would be really handy. So as wildlife crime officers, I'm not an ecologist, I don't know a lot about wildlife, but I'm passionate about protecting it. So if there's anybody in the room that's, I can talk to you about this, I can talk to you about that, that would be really great and be much appreciated. Thank you very much.